So I'm going to be awkward this entire time, and my voice is going to sound weird, because I am not used to this yet. But an idea I had was to start writing stories on a set of videos. And the main reason why I want to do this is because I personally want to get more experience with it. And main reason why I want more experience with it is because I want to develop games and I just want to be involved in every aspect of it, from writing to graphics to every bit of that pipeline. I personally just want to get into indie development, but that's just not going to happen anytime soon, so might as well practice some of the skills that may go into it. I know this is not exactly going to be the skills for it, but I just feel like writing a story. It also comes into other things I just want on my bucket list too, like writing a book, writing a show. Be interesting. So to start off with the brainstorming process, you have to understand one show that I absolutely just adore right now, which is Evangelion. I'm not going to go into details. I can't analyze it in the way that other people have, and like any show, it's a bit of a hit or miss. You can either like it or hate it, but just as I personally feel, just try it out or watch a trailer or something and get an idea if you might enjoy it. It's a bit weird, but it gives me personal ideas for it, and alongside the concept of it would be something like Titanfall. Those are the two main forms of inspiration for this kind of story idea. I really had an idea about going to Pinterest and looking up images for um, characters. Thinking about that, might want to just not do that because I don't want to just have my name played. But to start off with, a key theme, not really a theme, but an aspect to it, is that there is going to be giant robots slash mecha, whatever you call them. And the main reason is I just, growing up, found a fascination with things like giant robots, and it's just, there's something just really badass about a giant robot in a story. And I don't think it's a good idea to just put them in there, because it sometimes just feels like you're just putting them in there to have an excuse for like lazy storytelling or lack of actual writing. It's just the hero who gets into this giant weapon and saves the day and everyone's cheering. And I don't personally like the idea of that. One of the reasons why I kind of liked Evangelion, because it was like he didn't, like, some of the main characters just didn't feel like heroes. They had their own reasons for things. That wasn't just at the end of the day this badass who could do whatever. It was this dark reality that people were forced to fight, and it just made them uncomfortable. And some people, that was their self-worth, and some people, it was a conflict of their personal being. And also, you can just argue the main character's a whiny little. But let's not get into that. Yeah. Another thing is, since we're gonna have giant robots, obviously I feel it should take place in the future. So I'm debating on near future or far future. Not entirely sure which one I want to go for. I feel with the far future, I could do more interesting things like not have to generally talk to closely related topics like nowadays, because I personally find them a bit uncomfortable. Like, I tend to get pissed off when people talk about politics. It's just who I am. I don't enjoy them. I think they're very divisive. And it's kind of painful to watch people tear apart potential relationships over arbitrary things. It's not that politics are arbitrary, it's just sometimes the people arguing about I just don't feel they matter enough to tear apart some friendships. There are some situations where I can understand it, but just minorly disagreeing on like things like your ideas of like what would be the ideal candidate can just be absurd. But the near future, I don't have to struggle that much with creating things like slang or creating um, technology or concepts. It would just be like, oh, it's just a slightly more advanced version of what we have now, provided I don't have to have them in our world or not. And that brings us to the third note. I don't want it to take place in our world. I want it to take place in like an alternate reality slash like realm world, whatever. Um, but that kind of goes into also the debate with the near and far future. Like, they both have to kind of feel alien, but if I go with the near future, it's just going to be like our world that's not our world. But the far future, just regardless of which, is just going to feel alien, or in my opinion, should feel alien. It's I just far future has a lot to do with fantastical technology, experiencing this new world, like something beyond what we understand, because it just is like just another step in human race beyond what we have now. And so that like there should be this sense of wonder in it, like a hope for a future or dread of it. That is just that comes from the exploration of a new world, like a new possibility. So we have obviously the giant robots. This is going to be like a mecha story of sorts. We're still debating on the near or far future, and it's going to take place in another world. So I feel this is a good point to ask some more questions about the world itself. Like, we don't have to come up with a name right now. In fact, I feel it might be more appropriate to get a name that has a feel for it, like just rolls off the tongue and makes you think of something when you read or see this world. But at the same time, we can just give that connotation to that name by just writing the story, anyways. But I don't personally have any ideas or want to come up with a world name yet, because I'm not even sure how important that's going to be to the story. But one big question is like, what kind of culture is this world going to be in? Which is going to require some other questions to be answered first, but I think I could give some general ideas of it. Such as it's a technological world, obviously, because gonna it's gonna be a lot more tech orientated and around the perspective of people who use technology on a regular basis. Could end up using a spin about people who aren't. Like maybe it's just this one section of the story has all this technology, and the rest of the world is just a bunch of farmers. Actually, I don't know how I would write that out, because I don't want to write out an entire sentence saying all this. I feel I need a better way to sum it up. Technological clustering. I don't feel it's the right phrase for it, but that idea is there, and I feel it's a bit more interesting because I wonder what these people would be thinking of when they saw these giant robots and all these other things. Like, would they be scared? Would they be amazed? Do people often want to move to the city? Is there like a restriction on it? And that's some thoughts. That's some thoughts to have when starting this up. But I feel like I should just come back to that. So, we already made it out so that one of the key main things, and I think I should put this in giant letters in bold now, giant robots. The biggest thing is wondering how important we need to make this, really. Like, is this going to impact this? Is this a regular thing? Or is this an abnormal thing? Or even if it is regular, how do people feel about it? Do some people have conflicted feelings, or do some people just not care? And some of the ideas. So, drawing back to something like Evangelion, it's like they live in a city where these robots exist. They know they exist, and they have an idea. They're supposed to, like, pardon me, they're supposed to fight these creatures that are threatening their lives. But it seems like they're not seeing. One of the episodes just made it seem like, oh, they don't see the robots. They actually see that there's people inside. Like, maybe if they don't necessarily emotionally connect with them or care, but they just know there's people inside, and it's those decisions that are driving it. Because, like, there's an episode where the main character got into the first episode, got into a robot, and just lost it, and just lost control. And that's one of the things I actually love about Evangelion. It's like, the robots aren't like the typical things like you'd see, for example, in Pacific Rim, where they stand tall and strong. It's like, these robots are hunched over, slender. They just look monstrous half the time, and I just love that, and that's how I personally want in this story these robots to be depicted. But going back to the whole story is that this guy is upset after he finds out that the main character was piloting the robot, and he's mentioning he just punches him in the face because he's upset that his sister got trapped under rubble and is now like incapable of walking and doing certain things because of it. Like, and he blames him, and I feel that's an interesting note because it deals with certain things with society when you question things like this, because sometimes we like to just blame objects for this. Like, oh, this wouldn't have happened if. The one way it could have been like is, oh, this wouldn't have happened if they just didn't build robots and all of this stuff. No, he saw it as human error, not a error of these machines existing. And I just found that's just a bit fascinating to think about for a sec. Um, So in this world, like when things go bad, because let's say obviously we're not going to just put in giant robots, just have giant robots walk around. There's going to be fighting, and that is another question we're going to have. Is like, what are they going to fight? Are they going to fight other robots? Are they going to fight monsters? Is there really even? Do people question the need of these things really? But going back to it, the most important question with this is like how normal is this in society for them to see this? Like, is it, and if it is or is not normal, how do people see it? Like, do they want their politicians to just get rid of them? Do they feel there is not a need, or do they feel it's an important thing, or do they take pride in it? It's like, does each nation have their own robot that, like, they just symbolize for it? And I feel I'm leaning towards the more of indifference, and it's not because it wouldn't be an interesting story to explore the others or anything like that. Obviously, it'd be way more interesting. Just right now, I'm sticking to what I feel like I'd be a bit more comfortable writing, and I don't have enough experience in this world or writing or thinking about stuff to properly answer these questions. And to me, it's not going to be as fun if we have to just keep on writing about the fact that, oh, these people hate the robots and they hate the government, or maybe there's a secret society that's got these robots and they just come out to save the world every. No, I just want it to be a bit more regular, but I don't want it to be like a big issue. Like, maybe I'll write into the story some people's personal thoughts on it, but I don't want it to be a social phenomena or a cultural phenomena for the feelings of these robots. I feel they should be a bit new, and I feel people should find them a bit a necessity for the story to work. So, um, uh, let's make some bullet points here. And let's change you back to normal. That's one of the faults that I have, is that I just don't make sense when it comes to brainstorming. It's just, I just can't put things in the proper order. So that's good, because it's brainstorming. So, let's say an indifferent society, and as you can tell, I have no clue how to write this stuff so that it would make sense to me later on. I'm literally just going to probably come back to this and go like, what were you writing? But right now, I'd say it's fine. Right, I need to work on the skill, and this is what it's for. Maybe I'll drop the story before I even start writing. Who knows? Um, also, it's a necessity. So, under the category of giant robots, people are indifferent in society and find it a necessity. Okay, so now we could explore what we want as a deep theme, but I don't feel I'm going to be that good keeping to a theme, and I'm not sure if I really want to. I prefer the idea of a tone than a theme. I don't really have a big message I want to tell with the story. Maybe I will later on, but I feel it has to have a mood, though, which I think we'll get back to. Let's just stick to the giant robots. So, I'm going to create an enemy category, and the thing is that we need to answer, why are the robots here? Now, before we do that too, the world. I think that was one problem this is a problem I have right now. Is, again, I'm not thinking in a picture that is appropriate to building this story now. I think I accidentally skipped over an important detail, and this is why I'm coming back to it. I was talking about that I don't really want to go into detail about the world a bit, but I feel it's actually a necessity. So now this is a big question here. Why is having a giant robot important? What kind of world do they live in? We've already said it's a new thing. Also, we should add that in there. It's new. It's not like they've seen giant robots for like centuries and it's a normal thing. This is new. People haven't seen these before. They know what they are because, let's say, this isn't going to be like some fictional world where they've never had the idea of having a giant robot. Like, it's. I feel like it's just a cool idea that should just pop up into a society when you have technology, and especially technology that revolves around robotics. And since we're in a society, and this is either going to be the far future or parallel to us, right? We're in a society with robotics. So in my mind, it makes no sense to say there's no robotics. People don't imagine. I feel there's obviously going to be media and things like that, but to say I feel big questions about this world, though, is um, one question is like, how dangerous is it? Will the wildlife kill everything? Like, is it violent? This, and if you're wondering why I'm just asking myself questions, this is a way to think, and this is how I personally think. Um, I just go back and forth in my head with questions, and then I answer it, and it helps you more with the process. It's like actually talking to like another person, where you build ideas off of it. So, in my mind, brainstorming is a lot more about questions than answers. You shouldn't just pop off with a random answer. You should pop off with random questions. Getting a bit off topic here, but it's just how I feel it's best done. Um, so here's a question. So the question is like, how violent is the world? And another question that can pop off that is, let's say it is violent, and it's not like ours. Like it is like, or like an example would be Lost Planet. Let's picture that world. If you've played the game, you know that it's a really hostile environment. It's extreme conditions. There's these giant creatures everywhere that just kill you, and it actually is an interesting topic where they live off of thermal energy. If I'm remembering it right. If you walk upon this video and find that I got that wrong and you're just a big Lost Planet fan, I don't care. Okay, sorry about that. I'm back. Someone walked into my room, so I had to stop. So, what was I talking about again? Oh yeah, um, it's been a while since I played Lost Planet, so I'm not heavily basing it off of that. Just thinking about it, it's an interesting question. Like, let's say if the world is alien, how different are these aliens? Like, what drives them? Are they close? Like, are they carbon-based creatures like the ones on Earth? And I don't want to get into detail about some of the stuff because I don't know that much about biology or chemistry and stuff like that. And personally, I just don't like chemistry. Taking high school chemistry taught me that chemistry is not fun. At least not for me. Okay. But is the world dangerous? And I would say I want the world to be a bit peaceful. Like, people just keep walking into my room, and this is fun. Um, so, going back to the topic, and what I was trying to say was the answer is no. The world should not be a very violent place. Or, let's just say, the world's not naturally chaotic. It's not. It's not absurd compared to ours. It's not like, let's say, humanity in this world has tamed it in a similar fashion that we have. Which, in mind you, is not the best way to deal with nature at all, and by many means is one of the most destructive things. And I feel like exploring that maybe in the story, like they're polluting it or how they dealt with it and dealt with these factors, but that's a bit off topic. Let's go back to Anne. So, is the world dangerous? The answer is no. Now, it's not that I don't want there to be conflict. It's obviously there's going to be conflict. It's just I am inspiring it off of like Titanfall and Evangelion. And if you know either about those two, I don't know much about the story of Titanfall, but from what I understand is like let's say it's Titanfall, it's more like war between people. It's not nature killing you, and it's the same case in Evangelion. It's not like um, nature is trying to kill you. It's an alien force that is it's natural in that case, but it's not natural to your world. And you probably get it. But is the world dangerous? Not really. Now, is society dangerous? Now, that leads to many questions, like, where is dangerous? One of the biggest problems that I feel that makes a story unrealistic is that they make that could make a story unrealistic though. I don't think I've seen this too much, but I feel like there are people out there who do this where they try to make an entire culture of conflict and all this other stuff. And I feel that majority of groups don't thrive off conflict like that. It's not a stable way to function, and it doesn't seem like it. It's possible, I guess, that maybe somewhere out there, because God knows that there are cultures that existed on Earth that lived around war, but it wasn't like everything to it. It wasn't like if you're a warrior, you're weak, and it's. I just a bit find it absurd. There might be people in it there, and it's fine, but I just personally could not do that in the story. So instead, I have questions about society's parts, like places is an example. In my opinion, you'd probably find a city more dangerous than like out in the urban side. Or maybe there's some places where that's the opposite. Maybe I don't know, I said urban. Urban's the wrong word. I meant to say like farmland out in the countryside. Um, but maybe in some places that is a different case. I think there are certain places in like I was gonna say South America, but I'm not sure. And I don't want to just be disrespectful, rude, or say something that's just not plain out not true. But I'm pretty sure there's just places where the countryside can actually be more dangerous because it's just like people are a bit more secluded and um, they have this identity of protecting their property and things. This is just some of my thoughts. Okay, I don't know why it'd be more dangerous in the countryside, but there could be reasons, and maybe there are places that are like that. But I would say it's probably going to be more general that it's more dangerous to live in a city. There's probably going to be a higher crime rate. There is a denser population. There's more room for conflict and all these other matters. It's people don't mind their own business. It's everyone is everywhere. It's hard to have personal space there. And because of that, and it's not like people are just more violent in a city. It's just there's reasons for there to be more rampant crime in a city because of a denser population. And you're gonna it's the reason why we measure things in percentages and not by an exact number is it's like if let's say you had several billion people compared to several thousand, obviously having like a million murders is pretty bad. But compared to like 100,000 people, having like um, 10,000 murders Now, if you're comparing those exact numbers, it's obviously seems like a million's worse, but a million is not as comparable as a percentage to a billion as 10,000 is to 100,000. That's like, I don't know how to do the math here. Let's see. That's like 1% to 10. That's like, I would say it's about 1% to 10%, and that's like just doing it in my head, but I'm pretty sure that's not right or accurate, but just give you some general idea. So when we do this, we have to account for the fact that if we're going to make a city, we have to assume it's denser. It's not that there isn't nice cities. Like, if I'm right, like Japan has some pretty nice cities that have less, what do we say, conflict and like violence and stuff like that. There are definitely places in the world where they have really nice cities. In fact, from what I know, um, here in my home state, they have some pretty nice cities. If it's not to say there isn't like violence there, just this is a really fairly safe place. It's not. There just isn't that much crime really. So it's example. Now, talking about a city in this world, I feel I don't want to make it like an itty gritty place. Like, oh, there's drugs and prostitutes and all this other stuff on the streets. Um, I don't want. It's not like there wouldn't be any. It's just I don't feel it's a focus, and I don't feel it's appropriate to the kind of world we want to have here. So the world I'm imagining is a much more advanced society, has a bit more common sense than the current worlds where every nation's fighting each other. Oh, and everyone's no, it's not like that. I feel it's a bit more of a community, but it's a community built around the individual. So I'd say combination of like the East and West ideologies, sort of where you care for your neighbor and but you mind your own business in certain cases, or realize that your own success is through yourself, right? Things like that. So I'd say um, cities, this may sound like a conflict, but it's not really, in my opinion, are the most dangerous place. But at the same time, I feel they are the safest. Now, the first one, you might think, well, that conflicts with what you just said. And why would you say they're also the safest? Now, in my head, it's like I was having questions. Like, I didn't say them out loud, but there's some questions in my head. Like, if they did have giant robots and there's obviously a giant threat. Like, why would we build a giant robot to fight a mouse? Right? So I was thinking, what if they had walls around cities? So, obviously, um, whatever is attacking, it's going to be a very dangerous force, and not having this extra layer of protection makes it dangerous. So that's why I'd say the safest place. It's not, you're going to avoid a lot of things that could hurt you. But I feel whatever level of crime, um, drugs and things like that, or just generally the things that we feel are bad for society, they're going to be more clustered in this area. It's not to say I'm going to have a lot of it, or it's going to be like, oh, there's just so much crime in the cities. There's homeless people wandering around. You can find needles, and it's. I feel it's going to be a very cleanly place. It's just when crazy things happen, this is where they're going to happen, and people know that. And now, I guess you could say they are not the nicest places to live. Now, this actually leads to another question I actually just had. Because I was thinking of more of a just big cities and then just countryside around. But when you think about it, that's not how most countries are laid out, right? Um, when you think about the U.S., for example, if you live in the U.S., do you just go city, countryside? No, you have a lot of there's probably a lot of wilderness in between, but you go city, town, countryside, all this other stuff, and it's like some places like for example, there's Salt Lake in my hometown, like my home state of Utah. There's Salt Lake City, and then you permeate from there, and it just gets less of a city-like and lacking of my language skills. I wish I knew the word I'm looking for, but I was guessing I'd say less urban. But as you go out, it becomes closer and closer, and just becomes more open and just exposed. And if you if you live in the northern section of the state, it's pretty much going to just be city in the valley. Um, but if you live in southern Utah, for example, it's not. I'd say the farming community is more like in yeah, it would be in southern Utah, but there's towns, and these towns are usually going to be the farmers, but it's not all just countryside or farming. There's just some towns that just don't do that. Some towns are actually have things that a city. Utah's probably a bad example because pretty much when you go outside of the Salt Lake area, there is not that much. It's just mostly going to be farmlands and God knows the middle of nowhere. I don't know what's in Tooele, but I don't personally feel like going to Tooele. It's just way out there in the middle of nowhere, in my opinion. Or Delta. I don't see why you'd go to Delta. Um, so I'd say villages are an important aspect of this, or towns, whatever you want to call them. Um, because they are essentially the middle ground. They can have farming communities, but they're sort of what evolved into cities. Um, as people, they're sort of more of the quiet places, I'd say, that are just outside of cities that people kind of live in. And I feel like I'm definitely just way off base with how this works, but it's just in my mind that's how I'm imagining it. So let's just say towns, I'm imagining personally outside the wall. I'm like, why would someone want to live outside the wall? And I'm imagining it's going to have a social class reason. Like, some people can't afford to live in a city because cities are generally more expensive. Um, why couldn't why wouldn't someone want to live in a city? Maybe they just hear about all these awful things and they're like, I'd rather take my chances with what I know. And I know a lot of people who say they don't want to leave the state because it's what they know. Well, I also meet a lot of people who are like, not that interesting. Or I'd rather find some place that has what I need, or things like that. Or a lot of people are leaving things like farming communities because there's just not that much opportunity, which is another reason to move to a city. But these towns, I'm going to say they are not the safest. They're not safe in the context of what we defined as being safe, like from the creatures. So not safe from enemy. So they're not safe from whatever is out there that we are so worried about that we have the robots. But I feel they have some decent populations. So I had another intrusion, so I'm sorry that there's just so many of them. Um, yeah. So it's a decent population. And I feel some people are going to probably find me annoying, or like, why are you talking about some of the stuff? But I feel it's some things that I just don't want to overlook. Like, it's some things to consider. Like, even if it doesn't get written in, it's this is going to be some viewpoints that we're going to have to write from. And like one concept that we can have is we have this young pilot from the um, let's say he's from a farming village. You know, his outlook on life is much different than everyone else's in like this big city. So why wouldn't we want to know what he's thinking? Why wouldn't we want to explore these little places and argue how the world is functioning in this manner? Because it is so important. Just we, and the same reasons I didn't want to talk about certain other things, we probably won't use this. But I feel like world building is necessary, and you gotta skip over certain things to make the story, but we can't just skip over everything. We gotta get the bare bones structure of how this is so that we can actually think about how the muscles, like, we need the bones to figure out how the muscles and the organs are going to fit in, and then we can just put the skin over and the hair. The whole body's, there is the base structure that we need, the functionality, and then the looks. It's the order that we kind of have to kind of go in. So, a decent population. This feels like such a very unimportant detail, but I feel like I needed it. So these towns, though, they are, I feel in this age, they are abandoning farming. Abandoning farms. Because I feel there's a bigger threat, and these towns, it's not uncommon to see a lot of people. You probably don't see a lot of new faces like in a city, but there's a lot of people in these towns, so you have a decent amount of people you interact with on a daily basis and a reason to have your own ideas and not you're not it's not a group that's just going to carry on tradition for tradition's sake, like how it might be in a farm area. Like a lot of people who probably grow up farmers, I don't feel they're going to just move away because it's disinteresting. It's their way of life. And it's the reasons why a lot of people gave up farming in the past was because their way of life became threatened. Like, there was no money coming in from what they were doing. And so in this world, it's like, there's more technology. There's less need for people to be farmers. There can be less people farming to get about as much, or if not more food, right? So there's a turn away from farming. And since there's just so much that's going to be out there in this world, I would say, there's more reason for there to be not like farming towns and stuff like that. I'd say like the main goal of these towns is to become like the city. It's not, but they're gonna have their own little small town charm. They're gonna have something that makes them unique and separate from the city, where the city's like this amalgamation of a whole bunch of viewpoints and cultures and all this other stuff. These towns, they're essentially just what they're gonna be. every it's just it's like it's people are a bit more intimate, not as close as possibly in the countryside, but they're a bit more intimate. And I have a feeling that we might have a story where these towns and stuff like that. I'm imagining them more like how I've seen Utah, where there's this big city in the center, and there's actually townships and stuff like that. But there are certain things that aren't actually cities, but people kind of treat them like they are. And certain things that just barely became cities. Um, but they're all touching close together in the Salt Lake area. There's very few things that are just really far out. It's not like you can just walk there, but they're all kind of close together, touching and stuff like that. And I feel like this is one of the ways we're going. And so I was thinking, so the cities, I feel they're the center. Whereas, let's say, they're like the towns and stuff like that, they're going to be like districts and stuff like that that are outside in outside sort of like in a ring-like fashion, just outside and spread out or even touching close together, all this stuff. Because there's also time for them to develop and grow. Like, this could have been really long distances originally. Like, it could have like taken like quite a few hours, if not a day, to walk these distances. But the city is just so big that it's touching, that it's like it's going to take a really long time to get across the city, and it's touching these towns. These towns have also had time to grow because they had to build houses because the population increased. And that's another point for this world is I don't want to have, I don't know, I have this under society. I don't want it to be, for example, I don't want it to be like Japan. Japan has a slowing birth rate. Um, in my mind, this is just me, but I imagine more of like it being in a Utah way. Like here in Utah, it's not really spoken, but it's really the expectation that you marry young and have a lot of kids. Um, and so I'm not necessarily saying marry young, but it's like I just feel like it's the sense of community is there, and that these places have, in at least in the area we're going to be focusing on, is you kind of have a lot of kids. Whether or not that brings an issue to like feeding people and all this other stuff, but it's it's just the expectation, and people just live with that. It's that it's not like, oh, you just have a kid. It's more like people have like 5 kids. I have met someone with like seven siblings before. Now, provided that is a bit rare, but people have decently sized families here, for example. So I feel like that is something that I'm personally gonna put in the story where it's like birth rate. It's thanks for telling me that I suck at spelling and writing stuff. But I'd say it is stable, if not um, growing, like if not like explosive. Um, I'm not gonna say it's like I don't want to compare it to like baby boomers. That's why I don't. Not really what I'm going for. It's not like this is just a day and age where the whole sum of this nation or this part of the world is just having a boom in children and all that. It's more like they are. It's just the norm to be this way. Um, so we already talked about the towns. I feel like they're not going to be the biggest thing. They're actually going to be quite small, but they're just going to be not not small, they're going to be huge, to be honest. They're going to be closer to cities. They're going to be ready for that, except for if you go out into the countryside. Now, this is where I'm ready to talk about, is the countryside. So, what do you think when you think of the countryside? I think of a lot of wilderness, but I also think of a lot of farmland. Sad to say, though, I also, because of where I live, I think of industry. Where I live, there is things like copper mines and refineries. If you go out into the middle of places where no one lives, like you can go out to fields. I feel it's personally weird because to me I think it's probably weird for some people, but to me it's normal to be in the middle of the city and see horses. I don't necessarily see people riding horses. It's just in the middle of the city, they're just people who take care of horses. There's just still land like that. And it's harder to find places out. It's probably going to be easier to find them out in the countryside, but I personally think of more of the industry side of things and wilderness. So I think there should be two tiers of the countryside. There should be farm. I've had another interruption. I hope this is not a trend when I do this.
It absolutely
will. So, talking about this, I feel there's farming and wilderness. It's not that industry's not going to be there. It's just, it's not a focus here. It's not going to be a social thing. It's just people who live out there, let's say, they're probably going to work there, but it's like, but there's two kinds of groups. There's just people in the middle of nowhere and farming, which can also be in the middle of nowhere, but so both groups they're very small, which gives reasons for everyone to know each other, so very close. And with that in mind, people are a lot more simplistic. It's not to say they're simple-minded or anything like that, it's just they don't have reasons to care about a lot more bigger things. They are literally just doing their day-to-day things, like day-to-day deeds. They are just trying to get by. So, simplistic. And it's not like some people don't dream here, and it's obviously going to be the people are dreamers and want to go explore a city one day or something like that. It's just, and the assumption is just people had families who just lived there for so long that it's just nothing really beyond that. It's just like you're not necessarily there because you're just trying to make money or something. It's there because of your community and your family. Now, on the other hand, though, the people that I'm saying are wilderness or out in the middle of nowhere, I say they're the ones who work in refineries, mines, things like that, or loggers. This isn't really going to be something that's going to be like a family business, but just so you know, like this area, this is going to be the bottom of the barrel of society. It's not the poorest or anything like that. This is just in the hierarchy that I have in mind. This is not the most ideal places to be. It's not the one that everyone wants to be. It's not the one that even people growing up there are gonna find to be the most interesting. It's just this is where they're at. There might be a few people who are like living in cities and stuff like that and want a life more like this, but not really focused here. So let's say they work for big industry. And I feel that's the whole sum of this section. And I could go into more detail, but we need to still talk about the world a bit more. But this section of society, at least what we have so far, I feel it is good enough. Now, talking about the world, we already clarified, and you should probably be getting an image in your head that how this is going to be built. Like, cities are huge, and they're going to be the center for the story. And I need to figure out a better reason as to why. And some of the inspiration I feel comes from something like Evangelion or Titanfall, as I said, where there's either a war, so obviously the most important areas for infrastructure and stuff like that is probably going to be in a city. And some people may argue against, but it's just like, if you want to take down someone quickly and not just wait and starve them out and do things like this, you'd probably want to attack the city. You'd probably want to take down the government. You'd probably want to go where majority of their troops are trained and stationed, which actually is an interesting thing. Like, where are their troops stationed? Is this a violent community or stuff like that? But I am not going into detail about that just yet. Probably not in this video, but there's a lot of brainstorming to do here. So, with the world, right, we've clarified that it's not absurdly dangerous, and there's this. It's obviously advanced enough to have cities and stuff like that. It's near future, far future, right? We haven't fully explored the degree this is, but you have an idea that it's like cities are going to be huge centers. They're actually going to be really important, and it's not like people just move there because of job opportunities, but for safety, whatever that word means to you. But in this world, I feel it's, for the sake of the story, let's just say it's, we could go for, I'm going to make a map in a video later on of what I feel the world's going to look like, and it's probably not going to be too spectacular. I'm going to use GIMP, but let's say, is it going to be coastal, or is it going to be continental, or is it going to be mixed? What kind of world will this be in? Should we have an absurd degree? I feel like there should be one main continent in this world, and the world is just scattered out with many continents and islands. So I feel it's going to be very oceanic. So that also leads to how a lot of culture is going to be, meaning a large portion of the world is probably going to survive off of fish and things like that, fishing and stuff like that. So heavy amounts of fishing in this world. With that in mind, should we make the mechs aquatic? My personal feeling towards it is no. Well, you can argue that there's some questions about, like, the feasibility of this and stuff like that, and maybe some people are thinking, what about moving the mechs across and all these other places? And I'm like, no. Because one of the key concepts I had for the mechs was inspired off of Evangelion, where it was like, is it a good idea to put something like a dangerous reactor inside a robot? Like, if it gets destroyed and compromised, it could explode, and reactors, like in real life, explosions aren't as simple as just, oh, this one object's gone now, like in a game. A game, like a grenade, does basically nothing, but a grenade can do a lot of damage in real life. But in this world, one of the concepts is the mechs don't have a large battery life. They actually have to plug into cities, and I had a concept in a game where, hey, maybe you go into a tactical situation where you have to predict where your enemies are going to go. So what you do is that you drop down batteries, large batteries, and essentially power them that way. And I feel like I just remembered some things that I want to do this, which is going to probably lead to me scrapping a large portion of what we just did, or just reinterpreting it or changing it, because it's very important to me that I get this story right, so that if I make a game around it one day, um, the world is the way I want it. And I just remembered, I got so sidetracked that I completely forgot, oh yeah, this is a fresh world. There aren't any cities or towns yet. So, I'm gonna leave this here, but just right, not yet. So, it's a fresh world. I have a very good reason why it's a fresh world, and this is where one of the concepts are. And actually, this stuff is all still very important because this is how the world's going to develop. So, I was thinking back to what I said I wanted the game to be like in the back of my head, and it was very important to me that I kept it that way. And I think I started at like 1 and it's like 3, so it's going to be a long video. Um, so, I want it to be a colonization story, in a way. I don't know how to do this. I would definitely love someone to help me out with this, give feedback or ideas, but I don't know how to do this. But it's interesting. And some of the inspiration actually came from, can't remember the game. There, never mind. Let's just ignore that. Um, but with the giant robots, going back to the robots, they are powered through cables. They have to hook up. They can't just exist and walk around and stuff like that. Also, provided, how much energy does a giant robot even take? Like, wouldn't that kind of drain out your fuel source really quickly, depending on how many things it has to do at once? Also, I think it's inappropriate to call it a giant robot. I think mecha is still the right word, because a mechanoid makes more sense. Because the robots, I see them as autonomous. So let's just keep the word mecha. And from now on out, whenever I talk about this, I'm going to say mecha. And hopefully I remember this, but I'm going to say mecha. And I got rid of the robot just to remind me of that. So, with this, like, they needed cables and batteries. Provided this is way more advanced. It's not like these things are taking up the average house or spot and stuff like that. It's like, they could easily power it. It's just, design-wise, it's a bad idea to put a reactor inside of a robot, and that's what they've came to the conclusion to. They don't have the technology to build something that they deem like a good idea yet. I'm gonna have to stop soon because I have somewhere to be, but I can probably go like for another like 20 minutes. But it's advanced, but just remember this isn't like so advanced so they can come through every decision that every question we have. Like, it has to feel, I feel like we're gonna have to explain that. But I feel people can be easily comfortable with the idea of having cables with robots, even if they think it's probably dumb. I find it interesting. I find it a bit more of a handicap. One problem with the story is having no handicaps with your characters. Like, if we have a giant-ass robot who can win the day every day, there's nothing to go wrong if they're just stronger than your opponent, like we can put so many gadgets in the robot to make it indestructible, and it's not feasible. It's just like having little handicaps like this make it more interesting, in my opinion, because it makes it feel like there's room for failure. Like we could just easily just put one of these robots immediately after saying, I'm not going to call them robots anymore, I call them robots. Let's say we have one of these mecha pilots in a situation where they're fighting. Let's say we have the whole concept of kaijus in the story. We just have a kaiju ready to tear out the cord. It's like it's smart enough to figure that out. Now, what are they going to do? Now, another thing that was interesting about Evangelion that I'm going to use in the story was the idea of the backup battery. Like, it lasts long enough. It's not gonna last. It's not gonna last forever. And it's just a few minutes, like enough to get out of the area to safety, stuff like that. Even though they never use it that way in the story, and I'm like, everyone's kind of just crazy in that story, in my opinion. But that's something we're gonna use here. We're gonna use that entire concept there with the story. Um, Now we might explore later on like crazy concepts that people try to use to make a more elaborate robot that gets rid of this handicap, but I feel like it's ultimately going to just be like why they fail or things like that, or maybe there's going to be one good idea, or it's just yeah. In fact, I'm going to say at the beginning of the story there's going to be like no mechas, or if there are, they're not going to be used that often, and that's like wait, hold on, that's weird. The whole story's around mechas. Why wouldn't you use them early on? And the whole point is, as I said, they're colonizing a new planet. There is no infrastructure. There's nothing built up yet. There's the whole story is I want it to pass by quickly enough that it isn't like you just listening to a whole bunch of people jabbering on about nonsense and stuff like that, but it's something to explore. And I do have a concept that makes it a lot quicker, and it's not like they're gonna spend like 3 years later and the city's developing and all this other stuff. They have buildings. No, I was thinking more on the concept of thinking about Halo Wars, and this was one PS4 game that I was thinking of where they just drop down building parts from the sky. I was thinking about having something like nanite structures or small interlaced machines or something that just it's pre-made buildings that are just designed to be placed down. Like they thought about colonizing other places, and they realized maybe this extra few days or years that you have to take building these structures could be better spent actually developing the things you need to survive, like possibly developing a government, getting food, all this other stuff, instead of wasting so many hands on it. Um, Now, provided they probably have, I'm probably not going to have, like, there's a whole bunch of farmers, and that just doesn't seem right with how I place the story. Um, yeah, but I feel like I got way off topic here. It is, let's just recap here. The city is indifferent to the robots. It's not like, story, it's not like this is something very big to them. It's not like something minute to them. Um, it's a bit new. Now, I might change this. As I said, I just remembered a very important factor to actually building the robots. Like, wow, I just messed up at speaking right there. At building these cities or just how societies developed and all this other stuff. The fact that it's a fresh world. Now, as you can tell, I've been thinking about this for a while. But it's important that we don't mess up on this. So we could still have new robots, but it could be like new, like before they left, which also makes no sense. Like, why would they need a big robot and then just leave and leave with them? Like, were they expecting giant monsters before they even left the solar system? It's just, that'd be bizarre. Not going down that route. It can't be new as in the spaceship. because we all know giant robots and spaceships work so well together. They make so much sense, right? Um, you're going to be fighting monsters in space with giant robots. It's not to say there isn't concepts like that. Actually, they do stuff like that in anime, and I actually like some animes like that. I don't personally like Gundam that much. I like Gundam figures. I like some of the designs, but I don't really like watching the show all too much. But I feel it's a bit absurd for our story. It doesn't make sense. They didn't have a need for it. It's what they find on this world that gives them the need for this, and the reason why they design it. So I say when it's new, we don't mean like, oh, it's just barely discovered and they exist. I mean like, it's going to be new in the story. It's going to be developed in the story. It's going to be something that's being created alongside the story. Um, and one thing I actually want to add is organic. And some people might argue it's not a mecha, and that's one of the reasons people argue about Evangelion. Is, again, another concept I'm going to take from that is I found it interesting that it wasn't just that they look like monsters and all this stuff. It's like they essentially were. It was like the pilots had to bond with. I'm not going to have this bonding and all this stuff. I might actually. I really like the concepts of that. Um, but it's like they sort of tap into them neurally and kind of control them. Okay, and I was thinking about like having them like living creatures that actually interact and have their own thoughts and stuff like that, and something to explore there, where they're sort of enslaved by humanity in a way. Interesting topic for this, but let's just say they are organic, which is not an easy thing to explain. I recommend looking up stuff about Evangelion if you really want to understand. There's loads of YouTube videos about it. There's some that are like why Evangelion's kind of bad, but I've seen those few and far between. But you'd probably find a video where someone mentions why they're like this, or you can just watch the show and try to figure it out yourself. Um, I think they explain in the show, and this is just some of the concepts of it. And now, the more I think about it, I'm not thinking about them as just the size of it depends on what's going on, and I think it's not just giant robots. I think we should narrow it down to just mecha. And the reason being is I feel there's a range where some of them aren't organic. Some are, and it's going to be the big ones, the recognizable ones, the main ones that are. But you can have little machines that carry people around. And some of this goes back to the whole things where I was looking on Pinterest for some of this stuff, and I actually found some interesting designs. I think for the next video I will put some of them in this actual doc and show them, or find some better ones. So, I don't even know. Clustering. Okay. Gonna have to end this soon. Uh, so, with the mechas, we've already clarified essentially how they're gonna work. And I'd say the exceptions to the cables are the smaller ones. Exceptions, small boys. Small boys. I don't know why I spelled it like small boys. Small boys. And I personally just want it to be like that. I will probably create like story reasons later, but it's just some of the concept art I feel makes no sense with cables. But like the giant ones, giant robots and stuff like that, I feel Yeah, they're probably going to need it. Um, we haven't talked about enemies. We're probably going to do that next time. But we clarified what kind of world this is. It's an oceanic world. It's a fresh world. It's not really dangerous. It's going to have this infrastructure eventually. Because God knows that they're going to want this stuff. They're going to want things. They're going to need things. They're going to build up businesses and do all this other stuff. And they're going to need workers. And it's just going to be all this stuff. And it's like they didn't have to necessarily deal with it on a space station. Maybe that is a curious topic we could deal with. And the story was like them on the spaceship originally. But not right now. As we said, we want it to be explosive, but we could say early on it was minuscule. Like early on in the story, like when they just got out, it's minuscule. Because I feel the story should span a few generations, right? And that's if I write it that long, but I want it to span a few generations, and like first generation people on the spaceship, they're in middle space. They hardly have any resources. Why would you want to have a whole bunch of children? And you're in cramped quarters, and just I feel there's going to be a few people, but generally it's not going to be advantageous of having a lot of children and doing this stuff. Um, I think I've decided. I've decided if it's going to be near future or far future. I was thinking about the near future because I wanted to have things like cell phones, stuff like that, which I can still do in the far future. I'm going to say far future. Now, that does require me to probably do a lot more thinking, like technology-wise, where they stand. And right now, I might change my mind, so I'll just put future. Lazy, I know. Indecisive. I'm very indecisive. So, alternate reality. Obviously, no one can build a giant. I guess maybe someone might one day, but no one can just build a giant humanoid robot or machine. So, this is an alternate world where they have need for one, because I can't think of a single need we'd have one. Maybe like the US just wants to just stomp down on top of their enemies or whatever, but it's not useful. It's not needed. It doesn't make sense. But in this world, it does. We'll have to come up with a reason, like the enemies and stuff like that. Like they need something more nimble, like a human form. But right now, it's the reason why it's an alternate reality. Also, I just don't want to deal with some topics now. Technological clustering. See, I'm already kind of forgetting stuff like that, but I'm pretty sure, if I remember, that means in the cities. I can make a note here, just to make sure I don't forget. In the cities. In the cities. Yeah. And I've been talking a lot. I don't usually talk this much, but I hope someone sees this and can give their feedback. And I hope whoever does see this, if at all, finds it interesting. Because I'm personally actually thinking about just doing this, stuff like this. And I'm not gonna just do things because I feel people are gonna like them. I'm going to do them because I personally find them interesting. And I find this in particular very interesting. Now it comes to the actual story writing, staying on track is another thing. But I'm gonna say this is a good place to stop, and I'm just gonna stop. So, yeah.